I don't think there's any Disney ride that has quite reached the heights of Pirates of the Caribbean, except for maybe the Haunted Mansion and Horizons. Pirates, especially the original Disneyland version, has become a wildly popular staple of the Disney theme park experience. And while Disney has inspired other parks around the world through its strong attraction design that defined it for decades, I don't think that any other single attraction was as influential as Pirates. Throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, many other parks, especially in Europe, emulated what Disney had done to create their own versions. I think of the many indoor roller coasters meant to emulate Space Mountain, such as with Cedar Point's Disaster Transport, or Fantasyland's boat ride that essentially ripped off the Jungle Cruise. Blackpool Pleasure Beach has its own Alice in Wonderland ride that's heavily inspired by both the Disney film and Disneyland attraction, and Europa Park did something quite interesting, essentially building its own version of Spaceship Earth, but sticking yet again another Space Mountain inside. If you search for them, you'll find plenty of attractions throughout Europe that were inspired by Disney, and could get away with emulating them until the actual opening of Euro Disneyland in 1992. But if there's one ride that has been copied more than any other, it's definitely Pirates of the Caribbean. Throughout my time making videos, I've actually discovered a few of these and mentioned them in the past. For example, when I really dove into what Efteling offered, I was really enchanted by Fata Morgana, an attraction that opened in 1986. It was heavily inspired by the stories of the 1001 Arabian Nights. Now, it's not really an emulation of Pirates, as the theme is obviously quite different, but its design is certainly formed by it, taking riders on a lengthy boat ride past extensive atmospheric scenes, premiering at a time when rides like this were just not very common. Another attraction I mentioned before is Pirates in Batavia at Europa Park. Which opened in 1987, it was very clearly more directly inspired. It burned down in 2018 and reopened in 2020 as a completely reworked ride, changing its scenes and going in a direction that gave it a more distinct identity that feels more original, which I think is a positive direction for the park to have taken. Still, I mentioned these before, and I would like to save Fata Morgana and the newest version of Pirates in Batavia for when I finally get the chance to visit these parks. Instead, for today's video, I thought it would be interesting to cover what are essentially rip-offs of Pirates of the Caribbean, ranging from that original version of Batavia to other rides found throughout other European parks. While some of these are more unique than others, they're all intriguing for a variety of different reasons. So let's dive into one of the most obscure corners of theme park history, looking at the rides that couldn't help but imitate Disney's original classic. Before we begin, I just want to say that this video took me a bit longer than usual, just because research can take a lot of time. If you want to support this video, or really the channel, you can help me out by just leaving a like. I've also recently just begun channel memberships because people have been specifically asking for something like that. So if you'd like to become a member and essentially donate to the channel with some perks to go along with it, that option is now available. Starting off, there are two distinct attractions that took the assignment of copying Pirates of the Caribbean perhaps a bit too literally. Also, a big thanks to Lewis Wright for mentioning these in the comments of another video. In 1990, England's Drayton Manor introduced Pirate Adventure, which was reportedly meant to compete with the upcoming Euro Disneyland. It was a boat ride developed by Mock, with animatronics produced by Golding Leisure Design. Starting off, park guests entered a facade designed to look like a Caribbean fort. And yes, my pronunciation of Caribbean does change depending on whether I'm talking about the Disney ride or not, just to clarify. Once visitors boarded the boat for Pirate Adventure, they moved through a tunnel into the fort's prison, where they witnessed pirates strung up from the rafters, which framed two skeletons locked in a cell. Rounding the corner and passing by the guard, the boat moves into the dark and plunges down a short drop into the next scene. Emerging out into what I presume is a town set on a Caribbean island, you witness a few citizens living out their lives, but quickly encounter a pirate ship being repaired in the port. Moving further through the town and past drunken patrons in the bar, there's a light jump scare that comes from a pirate hanging down from above, and the boats move under a bridge where a sword battle is taking place. Quickly, riders encounter a pirate aiming a cannon at the boat, although it doesn't seem to fire. Maybe it did at one point, but this ride was notorious for its extremely poor maintenance towards the end of its run, so it's a bit difficult to know exactly how every scene was intended to play out. Moving into the dark, the next encounter happens on the left, where a pirate pops up from the barrels and a townswoman smacks him with a broom. Also on the left, the next scene has riders passing by a woman who is yelling at the pirates, who, on the right, appear to be taking goods from a captive man. Passing a prison scene on the left, the theme continues as it appears that the townspeople are locked up as a pirate rummages through their belongings. With the next portion of the ride opening up to the town again, various pirates are depicted as either firing cannons or otherwise torturing the citizens. This includes a man in a sinking boat, another victim who swims in a circle to escape a shark after being thrown in the water, and as riders encounter a massive pirate ship with an antagonistic captain, he fires a cannon at a sinking vessel where a sailor is clinging onto the last remaining part of the mast. Moving into a final cave scene, pirates are celebrating among their piles of loot gathered from the town, and for one last final goodbye, pirate skeletons are seen among a treasure chest, I think implying that you experienced a long-lost memory and are returning to the modern day. Just from this scene alone, and from the ride's premise of having you move through a Caribbean town being sacked by pirates, it's clear that Pirate Adventure is a shameless ripoff of the Disney attraction. Again, maintenance for the ride was notoriously poor, often leading to figures standing completely still or being completely removed, even though it still limped on until it closed in 2015. Still, it's interesting to see a different, lower budget version of Pirates of the Caribbean done by a different park, so I can't say that it's not intriguing. Immediately following the opening of Pirate Adventure, another ride with boats from Mack and animatronics from Golding Leisure Design opened as yet another pirate-style ride in 1991 at Belwardy Park in Belgium. Known as Los Piratas, it was located in the Mexico-themed area of the park and had riders entering a facade designed to look like a Spanish fort. On boarding the ride, the boats first moved past a scene of what I believe is a pirate retelling the story to a scribe. That might be incorrect, but there's not a lot of documentation of what the scene was intended to be. Quickly, riders then encounter a dinner table in the fort where the governor of Mexico is hashing out a deal with John Speedy, a privateer who he intends to send off in search of Mayan gold. The boats pass by a forge where golden Mayan artifacts are being melted down, and ascending a small lift, the boats then plunge down into the darkness as if caught in a horrific storm, splashing down into a tropical landscape with a volcano that has been ravaged by the tempest. It implies you survived the journey to the city of Cabo Real, although you can see that there were casualties with the sunken ships. Entering through the walls of the city, you can see that the citizens have already surrendered to the pirates as they try to appease them, but quickly, many of them begin to resist and fight back. You might notice a lot of recycled animatronics from Pirate Adventure, and soon, you actually pass under a variation of the bridge scene where a sword fight is taking place. You next witness a woman hitting a pirate over the head with her broom as he emerges from the water, but chaos ensues as the town is set on fire and the pirates begin to drive the citizens back. The city appears to be located around a Mayan temple, and traveling inside, riders watch as the pirates plunder gold from a tomb. The ride brings in a supernatural element as a mummy rises up from behind the pirates, and as you continue traveling through the temple, it appears that a curse has been triggered. Escaping with their plunder, the pirates are attacked by ghostly figures who appear using a Pepper's Ghost effect, and arming themselves, escape out into the Caribbean. Opening up into a battle scene, the boats pass by the pirate ship as it fires on a Spanish fort, but the soldiers fight back, leading to a lengthy scene with riders caught in the middle. Finally, the ride comes to a conclusion as riders encounter a laughing skeleton, and on the left, a pirate band plays a celebratory song on makeshift instruments, indicating that their journey was a success. Los Pirates closed in 2012, and while it shared a lot of DNA with Pirate Adventure, was still distinctly its own ride with a different setting in Mexico and an original story. It also seemed to be kept in much better shape, with a lot of its figures working better until its closure, but at its core, it's still very much an attraction that was based heavily on Pirates of the Caribbean. The Disney ride had the boats dropping through the dark pretty early on, has scenes with skeletons to reflect old pirate memories, take riders through the sacking of a colonial-era town in the Caribbean, has a scene with prisoners in a fort, and has a massive battle where a ship assaults enemy soldiers. All of this and more is certainly emulated in Pirate Adventure, and while Los Pirates does at least move in a different thematic direction, the scenes are still very clearly inspired by Disney. Both of these attractions could have certainly been a lot more original, but I'm glad that they existed, if only because their derivative nature made them interesting. Moving on to Italy, another Pirates of the Caribbean inspired attraction opened at Gardaland in 1992 as I Corsari, which took riders on yet again another boat ride, although this time the ride system was provided by Intamin. The attraction was refurbished in 2018 with updated projection effects and some alterations to the story, but at its core, it essentially remained the same, so you'll see a few clips here and there from the newer ride for visual clarity. The queue is quite unique, as riders board a pirate ship and continue to descend down further and further, hiding the true scale of the ride pretty well. On encountering the station, it's designed to look like a prison in a fort meant to hold pirates, which I suppose shouldn't really be surprising considering the theme of the video. However, once you board the boat and enter the darkness, riders take a controlled descent down a tiny slope, which results in a small splash, so it's not an actual drop like with pirates. Entering a beach scene, riders encounter Jason Montague, a ghostly pirate who becomes the antagonist of the ride, believing that the riders are there to steal his treasure. Moving into the darkness, this transitions to the next scene where the boats encounter Jason yet again, who attempts to drop crates and a cannon on riders as they sail through a shipwreck. In a scene reveal that should surprise no one, riders now move through the set of a massive colonial town. As they listen in on a tavern scene, they witness Jason and his crew as he speaks about intruders who have come to steal his treasure but have managed to escape. The boat then moves into the sewers, which doesn't advance the story, but does work as a transition to a swamp outside of the city. Gliding through the eerie and dense foliage with snakes hanging down, the ride takes a moment to quietly move through the scene, which concludes as you enter a mysterious cave. Jason is quickly revealed as he ambushes riders in the form of a serpent, although they manage to escape yet again. Moving through a chamber illuminated with glowing crystals, the boats move past the unfortunate who dared to steal Jason's treasure, and found themselves perishing through the curse he laid upon his gold. After traveling through the dark, the final scene reveals itself as Jason and his ghastly crew on his ship appear and attack a fort. I don't exactly understand how this plays into the narrative, as the riders in the boat appear to be his main target, but it's not exactly surprising to see yet another knockoff scene from Pirates of the Caribbean. Implying that you didn't survive the battle, the boat moves through a frightening underwater scene, where riders encounter sharks and a giant squid to reinforce the foreboding atmosphere. However, as the boats ascend a dark tunnel that is illuminated with a sparkling fiber optic light effect, they find themselves back at the station for an ambiguous ending, wondering if they had somehow still managed to survive. For the 2018 refurb, the ride was renamed, which translates to The Pirates Revenge of the Ghost, adding in new lighting effects and introducing projections of two new characters, Honorata and the Black Corsair, who work as guiding spirits to warn riders of Jason's traps. This also changed the ending, which unfortunately removed the giant squid, but had riders guided to safety where they returned to the station. This version of the ride closed in 2024 and reopened in 2025, using the old bones of the attraction to be rethemed into the kid-friendly Animal Treasure Island, which seems fine on its own, but fails to live up to what it replaced. While Equestrian definitely took inspiration from Pirates, especially with the ship battle scene, I did like its more original story, and just watching through video, I anticipate that its greatest strength was probably its strong atmosphere. I wish this ride was still around to experience as a more unique take on Pirates, but at the very least, it was interesting to explore through video. Finally, returning back to Pirates in Batavia, the original version is probably the most famous ride inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean, I think because it stands out as a high-quality attraction despite its derivative nature. Located in the Holland area of Europa Park, the queue first took riders past a series of scenes that worked as exposition about the Dutch colonization of the East Indies and their head city of Batavia. Just so that you have some context, in 1949, the East Indies became Indonesia, and Batavia was renamed to Jakarta. On reaching the station, riders found themselves in a pirate's cave, and boarding the boat, sailed out into the hideout. After encountering some animals and a pirate sitting with a bottle, the boats move into the dark and, as you would expect, drop down into another scene, leading to a big reveal. Now in the middle of a battle, Dutch soldiers are seen fighting pirates for the city of Batavia, with the scene clearly conveying the overwhelming force of the pirates. Gliding through the water under the city walls, riders are brought into a district of Batavia where the pirates are looting the city and taking the citizens as hostages. There's a lot going on in the scene, but one notable element I noticed was a pirate chasing a woman on a spinning mechanism, definitely revealing just how much the Disney ride inspired this one. There's a little too much detail here to describe, as the ride is a visual overload, but moving on under the bridge, the boats moved into a new part of the city where the chaos continued, and it appears that the pirates set many of the buildings aflame. Moving under another bridge, a pirate dumps what appears to be water out of a jug right next to the boat, and moving into the next scene, it opens up again, showing the city on fire as the pirates continue to loot and harass the citizens. Continuing, the next scene portrays pirates stealing food and livestock from what I believe is a market, and after passing a tiger and moving further to the city outskirts near the wilderness, there is a scene with pirates in a cell, begging a monkey to hand over the keys. Moving outside the city gates, plunder is brought outside to the jungle, which is filled with aggressive animatronic creatures. Riders are then brought down river through a fishing village, where there aren't any moving figures, at least not as far as I can tell, but you do pass by an in-park restaurant, which is known in English as Bamboo Bay, which itself is clearly inspired by the Blue Bayou restaurant at Disneyland. Moving out of the village and into the darkness, the boats then return to the unload station for an abrupt ending. So, Pirates in Batavia, despite its unique setting, is very much a beat-for-beat retelling of Pirates of the Caribbean, although just with a few scenes and elements moved around. While I'm normally of the opinion that visually busy dark rides is usually a good thing, in the case of Batavia, it's actually quite overwhelming and is executed without finesse. While there's a lot to see, most scenes appear to just be pirates plundering and harassing the townfolk, often repeating the same actions scene to scene. While Pirates of the Caribbean also has a lot going on, each scene is crafted carefully with distinct events playing out, defining each scene as being distinct from one another. Unfortunately, Pirates in Batavia, while visually interesting on first impression, was designed in a way that I can only describe as clunky. However, unlike other Pirates of the Caribbean ripoffs, it seems that Europa Park treated this attraction with a lot of pride as one of its classics, which is why I feel a bit bad about criticizing its derivative design. However, after it suffered from the 2018 fire and premiered again in 2020, it became a completely new attraction, keeping the theme, but making massive changes to many of the scenes. It's still very much inspired by the Disney attraction, but it now feels more like a tribute rather than a reskinned copy, making this an attraction that I really want to experience now that it has a well thought out and distinct identity. Still, for now having covered 4 distinct ripoffs of Pirates of the Caribbean, there's just one more to take a look at that is interesting because of how different it is from all the others. You might recall that in the beginning of the video, I mentioned that Phantasialand used to have a boat ride that directly took scenes from the Jungle Cruise. Retheming a different boat attraction on the lake inside the park, it reopened in 1979, and in English was known as Viking Boat Trip. It's so strange because riders boarded Viking longboats and sailed through the Jungle Cruise scenes, and then passed an actual pirate ship. However, on entering a cave, you would think that you would encounter pirates, but instead, it's a series of scenes with Vikings. While the segment is short and contains many figures that are unique in the actions that they are performing, there are still certain scenes that are directly inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean, with the most clear example of this being the prison scene with the prisoners begging a dog for the keys. On exiting the cave, your Viking adventure continues through even more knockoff Jungle Cruise scenes in what is one of the strangest and most random rides that I've ever come across. It's clear that, before the opening of Euro Disneyland, European parks were very much inspired by the attractions of the original Disneyland and Walt Disney World, with countless knockoffs being present all throughout them. However, Pirates of the Caribbean is certainly Disney's most influential attraction from this era, and I think this video illustrated how often it was copied. Drayton Manor's Pirate Adventure was probably the worst of these, as it was never maintained very well and had a messy execution, recycling a lot of iconic scenes and elements from the original Disneyland ride, but not to great effect. Los Pirates at Belluarte had a more distinct identity with its Mexican setting and more focused story despite its derivative elements, and the ride that actually seemed the most original was Gardaland's I Corsari, taking only some elements from Disney, but establishing a unique identity with its story and taking the idea of a pirates attraction in a very different direction. Finally, the original Pirates in Batavia also took a little too much inspiration from the Disney ride, but at least it tried to distinguish itself through its setting in the East Indies, and with Europa Park taking pride in the attraction, completely reworked it into the notable ride that it is today. When I wrote this video, I didn't really know if anybody would find this subject interesting, but I did have fun by sifting through video of these old rides and seeing what they entailed. If you also found knockoff Pirates of the Caribbean rides to be an intriguing part of obscure theme park history, I would very much appreciate it if you left a like on the video, as this took a lot of time to research. As always, if you like videos like these and haven't yet subscribed and hit the bell notification yet either, you can also do so now to be alerted to new videos as they're released.